Hello, True Blue crew. Are you getting ready for a weekend of sewing? Do you need a quick finish? Are you making a gift for someone and need a starting point for your next design? Well, in this video, I want to share some tips and tricks for making a full-size quilt out of a panel. Panels make a great starting point. They're faster because you don't have to cut out a lot of small pieces before you start sewing, and they have such great designs right now. I've really been enamored over the last couple of years with the Klimt panels. There's a golden cat panel. I've seen gorgeous seascapes and all sorts of animals and patriotic prints. And of course, the holiday panels are a lot of fun as well. So you really can tailor your quilt to the recipient's personality and interests with panels. But many of the panels are only about 24 by 40 inches. 40 inches is the width of typical fabric from selvage to selvage, and 24 inches seems to be a good design width for these panels, but that's much smaller than you would use for a typical quilt. Lap size quilts are about 50 by 60. Twin size quilts are about 60 by 80. So you can see that we need to add a lot of fabric around the edges to build out those panels. Now, a lot of fabric companies will design coordinating prints that you can use to create that extra space to embellish your panels and bring them up to size. And I want to show you what I've done to create borders and to fill the space with some of my favorite quilt blocks that helps bring a panel up to a full-size quilt. So I hope you'll let me know if you have other favorite techniques for working with panels. I'd love to hear about them in the comments. And you can always email to share photos. I love to see quilt show and tell. So here is my latest quilt finish from a panel. I love turning panels into full-size quilts, and I want to describe the process for you with this recent finish that I am working on for Quilts of Valor. It started with this panel that you can see has the United States on it, and because I knew that this quilt would eventually go to Quilts of Valor, I knew that I wanted it somewhere in the range of 60 by 70 inches as my quilt top size. So I measured the panel and it was only about 42 by 35. So kind of odd dimensions there that I had to bring up to a twin size quilt. So my basic formula for a panel is you need to know your starting point, your length and your width. So measure your panel, and then you also need to know your end. So let's say we are working with our twin size quilt and we know we need a width of 60 and a length here of about 80. So if I started with the those standard dimensions, it was 40 inches long, about 24 inches wide, then I just need to subtract. And I need my 60 minus my 24 is 36. So I need 18-inch borders on the top and bottom. And I also need, for my length, I started with 80 and I need to take away the 40. That gives me 40 inches cut in half. Means I need 20-inch borders for the sides to get that whole quilt. So you can work with that 20 inches and that 18 inches to add different size blocks into your quilt, or just multiple borders. Let's say for this 20-inch, we want to do a 3-inch, and then maybe a 6-inch is only 9. So then we still have 11 inches that we would need to fill. And it can add a lot of interest if you put some block designs in there rather than just straight strips of fabric. It's very important to keep those final measurements in mind when you are working with panels. It just helps you fill in the space. And that's the design challenge that I love when I am making quilts, is to fit all the pieces and parts together. I also remembered that 2024 block for Quilts of Valor is this Ohio star. So I went to my scrap bin and pulled out my AccuQuilt, and those blocks came together very quickly. Let me show you that process. So our red square is going in the middle, and these blue half square triangles are going to be the corners as kind of a frame. And then we have our quarter square triangles become the star points for our Ohio star. And I'm going to sew this as a 9 patch, and so I will have my 3 rows that go together to make the final block. So I have my panel and I have my 12-inch blocks. Then it was a matter of adding some borders to bring it up to that finished 60 by 70 inch size. And I went over a little bit. I figured that a 3-inch border would balance and frame the panel and the blocks really nicely. And then a 6-inch outer border would finish off the quilt. And I found these patriotic fabrics. The blue little hexy dots there is a standard blender that I love for my quilts. And it was a lot of fun pulling all these pieces together to make a fabulous quilt for Quilts of Valor. Each year, Quilts of Valor chooses a different quilt block and encourages quilters to use that block in their quilt designs for that year. But I also love the Lemoyne star, an 8-pointed star. And I'd love for you to check out this video next if you enjoy star quilt blocks. Happy quilting!